Brian Villers
Okay.
here from Immortal Dominion. How's it going with the band these days? Working constantly?
Pretty much, yeah. We just got finished our new album and getting ready to put it out here in March. So it's been a lot of work.
So any tour dates lined up for this summer?
We're working on some stuff with some of the fests, the nationwide fests and stuff like that, but nothing confirmed. Right now we just have some shows throughout Colorado at the Vapor Fest March 20th in Denver and April 9th at the Fort Collins Music Experiment Festival up here in northern Colorado.
So for the new album, it's entitled Primordial. Where do you guys record this album and how long did it take?
It ended up taking a long time. Our the guy that produced our album is named Sterling Winfield, who's worked with Hell Yeah and Pantera and Merciful Fate and King Diamond, and he came and we got the album about halfway done, and then he had to go record the new Hell Yeah album, which ended up taking longer than they expected, and then he had to come back out and finish our album. So it ended up taking about a year and a half to finally finish the whole thing. We recorded it here in Loveland, Colorado, at a great studio called Backbone Studios.
Would you say that, the recording session went, good? Not much, let's say, difficulties happened in recording this? Everything went, besides the producer not being, available at times?
Well, we definitely had some speed bumps in the studio. We got in the studio, and the drummer that we had with us at the time wasn't really studio ready, according to Sterling, and so we went through a bunch of stuff and brought in a different guy to lay the drum tracks down, and it kind of definitely hit some few speed bumps. But I think in the end, we all learned a lot and came out with a way more professional product.
What type of amplifiers do you use on this album?
I used just straight Marshall tube amps. Believe we used a little bit of there's a brand called Framus that the other guitarist used to give us sort of two real different sounding guitar tones. So Framus and Marshall were pretty much what we used.
And for guitars, to get the tone?
The guitars we used, I used a Parker Fly Artist with some custom DiMarzio pickups. And then we used a variety. The great thing about this studio is that it had a bunch of vintage guitars and a bunch of stuff. So we used some nice old Gibson SGs, and for different solos we used different guitars all over the place. But for the most part, we stuck with I believe there was an Ibanez the other guitar player played, and I played on a Parker Fly.
Where does the name Immortal Dominion come from? Who came up with this idea?
The band has been together since about 1993, and our lead singer was just in a room with his friend's mother, and they were looking through the dictionary, and they found just the coolest names they thought they sounded good, and they ended up putting Immortal and Dominion together a long time ago.
So how long have you been in this band?
Since 1993.
Okay, so you're one of the founding members.
Yep. Both Ray, the lead singer, and I we've been playing music and writing songs together right out of high school, in the early 90s. So
compared to, to the beginning of 1993 compared to now, has the industry changed a lot, would you say?
Oh, I would definitely say so, yeah. I mean, back then, all everybody wanted to do was get some sort of a label to sign them or get a record deal, and I'd say definitely nowadays that's not the top choice by a lot of artists. With CD sales being so far down and everybody just downloading all their music, it seems like the music industry right now can be won over by an independent artist a lot easier than it used to be.
But at least now you can have the internet and, find different fan bases which you could have maybe not have at the, in the 90s.
Yeah, definitely.
And use that as your advantage also.
That's right. I had somebody tell me that, some people might look at it as a bad thing that the record labels are kind of crumbling around us, but a really creative band can turn this into a positive thing.
So for your influences, what would you say your guitar influences are?
Oh, I started back in the days when I was little, listening to Kiss and Black Sabbath like everybody else, I think. And coming up through there, I really liked a lot of guitar players for a lot of the cock rock bands, the Poisons and Rats and Guns N' Roses, Slash definitely, and then graduated into thrash and started listening to Exodus and Testament and Kirk Hammett and all those guys. I like Vernon Reid, from Living Colour and people like that are extremely creative and mixing a lot of stuff into the metal. to bring out new sounds.
For Immortal Dominion, when you guys recorded the album, is there stuff left over that we won't see, in the future albums, or is it all going to be released?
No, we really didn't end up with any extras. We rewrote a couple songs after we listened to it for a while, since we had the advantage of recording it, and then Sterling went off to record that other band and couldn't come back for a while. So we had the advantage of listening to it for quite a few months. And by the time he came back, we had a lot of changes, and we added 7 or 8 guitar solos to it. We rewrote some vocals. We rewrote some verses. We completely changed a lot of things around. So I think, we ended up using everything we brought into the studio, but probably only because we were able to rewrite and revamp a lot of it before we put it out.
This album was mostly done all digitally, not analog?
Yeah, actually, I believe what they did was they recorded it digitally and then sent it to the analog tape to be mastered from the digital sources. So it still gave it sort of an analog feel, but it was all manipulated digitally, so it's a little different.
Because today also, you can get all the plugins for the computers and almost do your own mastering at home, in a sense, with the computer age.
Yeah, you can. Sterling, our producer's kind of an old school guy, and he still believes in a lot of the fidelity. A lot of that fidelity gets lost when everything gets squashed into an MP3 or something like that. But he still strives to really create a really beautiful sounding record without trying to do it without as many plugins as he can and doing it for real. There was a plugin that could make it sound like you sent it to tape and brought it back, but he preferred to do it for real.
Because it does add the real sound, the analog is a way to do it, in a sense, because the digital is all squished and compressed, like you said. Right.
And the way he brought it up is that a plug-in can't simulate the little pieces of metal that spread onto the tape and go back. It's impossible to exactly simulate that, and he wanted the real sound of it.
So what is Brian Villers doing this weekend?
This weekend, I just saw Hell Yeah, All That Remains last night on the Jägermeister tour, and tonight I think there's some more concerts I'm going to go to. I've just been going out and seeing a bunch of live bands and seeing what's going on out there these days. We've got tons of interviews, of course, and a lot of other press going on. I own my own T-shirt shop, so that's an advantage for me as a bandmate. So I'm kind of putting out designing and making a whole bunch of new merchandise for when the album does come out. It drops March 22nd nationwide on iTunes and Amazon and Rhapsody and everything, and Reverb Nation and all that. And so I'm just kind of preparing. I want to have a nice line of merchandise, a bunch of variety for people to choose from. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing that.
Will this album reach, actual music stores?
That, I don't know what kind of distribution we've gotten so far for physical distribution. I know that there's been a lot of talks about different places where it's going to be available, but it really hasn't gotten out there far enough, I don't think, for people to want to pick it up for distribution physically yet that I know of. But hopefully we're going to be hitting some radio stations on the second week in February and see where we can go.
Radio is the way to go still today, so that's good.
That's for sure.
A lot of people, tend to forget about the radio world, and the radio world is what actually plays the artists. Yeah,
you're exactly right. I mean, even, how many bands have just climbed up and done really well just on college radio.
That's true.
Alone, so.
Because we can't forget that, college radio stations carry lots of students, which, go to the concerts and pay for the merchandising.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people forget about that. They think radio is a bad thing.
Well, it ain't. Well, Brian, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and hope you have a great 2011.
Thank you very much.
All right, you have a good day, man.
You too. Thank you.